You are a person who likes cars and is currently guilty of using the internet. So far, everything I've said is a factual statement, and with that, I'll now use this position of power to make an assumption about you. At some point in your life, you've heard or will hear the following fun fact. Chevrolet had problems selling the Chevy Nova in Latin America because Nova means it doesn't go in Spanish. Because of this, it became a massive failure over there. Articles, comment sections, books, they're all filled with a piece of fun trivia that has been regurgitated for decades across many mediums. Even Tom Waits referenced this for some reason. And it's not hard to see why. This Nova no-go situation is clearly another victory for GM moment. A bad decision that has taken its rightful place in a long line of such decisions. After all, it's GM we're talking about, the automotive equivalent of a big orange dog with a smoking problem. Except, let's do what most people won't do. Let's look into this. It's hard to pinpoint where the claim about the Nova's fortunes in South America originated from. It's something that has been circulating our stratosphere for decades by now. The earliest mention of it that I could find was in a book from 1982, I Could Have Kicked Myself by journalist David Frost, subtitled The World's Worst Decisions. An appropriate topic then, just a quick little anecdote featured in there. But by 1993, by the time Blunders in International Business by David A. Ricks was published, this piece of trivia had expanded to include a new edition. Apparently, the name of the Nova was eventually changed to Chevrolet Caribe instead, to increase sales. And this is where things truly fall apart. If it barely had any credibility before, it had none remaining now. Let me show you a Chevrolet Caribe. This was a show car from 1966, essentially just an Impala with the roof chopped off, making it a showcase for what could be. Notably, the Caribe never went on sale and such a nameplate was never used by Chevy again. The only production car to use the Caribe name wore a Volkswagen badge at the front, as a version of the VW Golf that was sold in Mexico. So the Caribe nameplate has a history with Chevrolet and with a Spanish-speaking country, but both are unrelated and the Nova connection is simply false. But what about the legend of the Nova's failure in Latin America itself? Does the story have any merit? Well, I've got one question that I want you to answer. When you hear the word carpet, do you think of someone's pet living in a car? The entire premise of this myth is predicated on the idea that Nova, being made up of no and va, somehow renders it unintelligible as an actual word. It assumes that the average person speaking Spanish breaks words down under a microscope, instead of interpreting them as an actual singular word, which Nova is in Spanish as well. Abundance doesn't make you think about a specific dance that a bun can do. You've probably ate a sandwich at least 3 times without conjuring up images of a literal witch covered in sand. Or the word cargo still won't make you think of sandy witches. And Nova didn't make people think their car would be broken from the factory. In fact, while exact sales data is difficult, if not impossible to come by, General Motors' marketing department told researcher David Mickelson that in countries like Mexico and Venezuela, the sales of the Chevy Nova were very strong, even surpassing initial expectations. That's because buyers aren't stupid. Nobody buys a Toyota expecting to get a toy Yoda. Consider that fact checked. Tell me what this is. Come on, yell its name at your screen. Quite a few of you would have recognized this as the Porsche Varrera, the story behind it going something like this. In 1988, Porsche began development of a minivan codenamed EA266, based on the upcoming Volkswagen Charan's platform called the Varrera. This was to use the flat 6 engine from the 911, and indeed, one prototype was spotted and photographed while undergoing testing. However, the Varrera would eventually be cancelled amongst multiple other Porsche prototypes. Interesting. So we've got what is claimed to be an actual photograph or two of the prototype to go alongside the story. Furthermore, the Varrera nameplate, despite the fact it sounds like a pun, does have legitimacy behind it. So much so that an actual book from the early 2000s listed the Porsche Varrera minivan as an actual model the company was producing. How'd that happen? Actually, it's not the hardest thing in the world to speculate about the origins of this. There could be other examples out there, but this is an example I found in an official brochure for the Porsche Boxster. Right at the end, you'll find the usual legal info and text surrounding their protected trademarks and whatnot. Here, the following registered trademarks are listed: Porsche, the Porsche mark, 911, Carrera, Boxster, Cayenne, Tiptronic, VarioCam, VarioRam, Varrera. Indeed, Varrera is an actual trademark name that was registered by Porsche on the 24th of July 1995 in Germany and later on November 2nd of that year in the United States. While it has since expired in America, the German filing has interestingly enough been extended multiple times, most recently in 2015. Before eventually expiring on the 31st of July 2025. So what exactly is there to even research? The existence of the Varrera has basically been confirmed with this, hasn't it? Well, let's take a quick look at the repository where most of our info about the Varrera seems to originate from. Its page on the site wikicars.org, with the earliest edit being made all the way back in 2007. It includes a small write-up about its apparent history, claiming the Varrera began development in 1988. The Chiron and Galaxy project began to be developed in 1991, so this makes little to no sense. But other than that, there's not much to gawk at here. It's just a shame that it doesn't list any sources here. Trust me, I checked. And then checked again. For now, this wiki page is the source itself. So where does this leave us? It seems that on one hand we have apparent proof of the Varrera's existence. On the other hand, nothing else should really be trusted. Where do we go from here? Well, let's have a look at the car that this minivan was supposedly based on, the Volkswagen Chiron. The Chiron made its debut, sort of, at the Paris Motor Show in 1994. Now, I say sort of because it wasn't quite the production version of the Chiron that was showcased there. Instead, the public got to see the Chiron RS. Now, aside from the body kit, the big feature about this half prototype, half concept car was its powertrain. A 2.8-liter VR6 that was engineered to send 252 horsepower to all four wheels, resulting in a 0 to 100 time of 8 seconds. That's almost as fast as a Ferrari F50, if you were really gentle with it. While this choice of engine never made it on sale, the body kit, with a few alterations by Projekt Svo, did make it, being sold officially through Volkswagen dealerships. Unfortunately though, even with that, one of the options that failed to make it to showroom floors from the Chiron RS were the wheels. The Porsche Cup wheels. Yeah, what I failed to mention was that the powertrain in the RS prototype was engineered, or at least modified, by Porsche. This was a Chiron-based Porsche powertrained Porsche minivan. Now, was it a proof of concept for a future Varrera production model? Or was it just a cool little project to get people hyped about the upcoming Chiron and Alhambra and Galaxy trio? I don't know, so I asked Porsche directly. Turns out they were busy and I couldn't get an answer from them either, so all I could possibly do now is speculate. This begs the question, what am I trying to debunk here? I've just spent the last 6 minutes talking about how the Varrera project might have been a real thing after all. Well, two aspects have always bothered me. First of all, is any of this real? And second of all, these pictures. Whenever the Porsche Varrera is discussed online, these photos get posted of it, claiming to be pictures of an actual prototype. Someone says it looks like a Renault Twingo, and everyone moves on with their lives. It is a chronic cycle, and I want it to stop. Because there is no way these are actual photos. They're too smooth, too staged, and definitely feature the feeling of being an airbrushed render from a 90s magazine. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's been created based off of this image. But a hunch is hardly conclusive, so I had to find the original source of this. As it looks like something from a 90s German car magazine, I went and looked through every Automotive und Sport from the mid-90s, hoping to find something, but eventually I gave up empty-handed. Turns out it was the cover story of an issue of Autobild magazine. And there it is, the original report by Autobild from the 22nd of July 1995. These are renders for a magazine, not real pictures. Some interesting bits here include the claim that there were 3 variants that were going to be offered: a 4-seater business van with a rotating center table, a 6-seater family version, and a 3-seater sports variant with holders inside for a surfboard or a bicycle. Sounds very interesting, but do keep in mind these are rumors from a 90s magazine and not gospel. These are renders for a magazine, not real pictures. The original Dodge Viper and the Mazda Miata NB look so similar because they were designed by the same guy. Alright, let's have a look. The Viper concept was unveiled in 1989, with the production version being launched 2 years later, and it is head of Chrysler's styling department, Tom Gale, who usually gets credited with designing the original Dodge Viper. But as we all obviously know, cars are designed by a team of designers, all reporting to the head of the design department. And in the Viper's case, one of those team members was an up-and-coming designer by the name of Ken Sayward. Ken Sayward was a junior designer on the Viper project. However, in October of 1990, he would end up being snatched up by Mazda instead, and eventually was put on the next generation MX-5 project, as assigned by Tom Matano himself. There, he was rather instrumental in designing the second generation Miata NB. Ken Sayward did not design the exterior of the original Viper. As I mentioned, he was a junior designer on the project, with it being one of, if not the first proper vehicle he ever worked on. His contributions couldn't be seen on the exterior, but rather on the inside of the car, as the interior he designed would be the one to make it to production. Personally, I don't really see the similarities between this and this. So sure, the same guy did work on the original Viper and the second-gen Mazda MX-5, but believe it or not, that guy did not get 2 paychecks for copying his own homework. So far, we've discussed a car's name, a minivan, and the 90s. With that, let's talk about the name of a minivan from the 90s. The Opel Sintra is terrible. Quality issues plagued the car from its inception, from having the fit and finish of a Romanian prison to just being plain unreliable.
The lowest ever satisfaction score in the entire history of the JD Power survey. I give you the Vauxhall Sintra.
Not to worry, all of those problems were overshadowed when it was crash tested. Those dummies did not make it. As soon as the Sintra came, it had disappeared. Opel and Vauxhall rather quickly pushed the Zafira to replace it and never spoke of the Sintra again. Sintra. The name of this MPV, and also a beautiful picturesque town located on the Portuguese Riviera. A perfect namesake for a car then, following the long tradition of cars named after scenic locations in southern Europe. Except if Wikipedia is anything to go by, the Opel Sintra wasn't directly named after this town. The Sintra name was chosen by a computer from a list of short, easy-to-pronounce words. A computer, those were all the rage back in the 90s. Look around a little bit and you'll see this little factoid be repeated quite often when the Sintra is brought up. Which is like once a year, but still. As for their source, they all seem to lead back to this. A section on a Wikipedia page without any sources. I tried looking for anything to back this claim up, press releases, contemporary road reviews, the like. And I came up empty-handed. Every mention of it led back to this. So let's inspect this innocuous paragraph. Again, it doesn't have any sources, so that's convenient, and it was added by a user in early 2009. A user who doesn't appear to have contributed to Wikipedia before or after this one singular edit. Now, as they didn't make the edit under an account with a username, we can see their IP address, and with that, we can track down their approximate location. The person who inserted this factoid into the Opel Sintra's legacy forever was located somewhere in this circle. You know where the town of Sintra is located? What do we think? Was this someone who was so embarrassed by this minivan they didn't want it to be forever associated with their beautiful home? I can't tell you for sure. I can only strongly imply so. First of all, a massive thank you to Discord user Octofun. I did order a copy of that Autobild magazine online, and I'm still waiting for it. With the help of him, we got our hands on a digital copy of the Varrera article from the mysterious collector Edgar. Again, a massive thank you to both of them. And to all of our new members. Shine, Caetano, Ensalade, Sun, Alex, That Guy, Apollo 80s, Fatih, Anaf, Kazuki, David, Vowel, Captain Risky 21, Emil, Maddie, Chavisky, Nathan, Rex P, No I, FM 1055, Hipponox, Dominic Lightfoot, Who is Sebi? Draco, One Fist Guy, Motz666, Aniket, Alexa, Go Go, Chemu Chen, Andrew Russell, Daniel Felipe, Your Cardigan Disaster, Halva, Masek, Harpies, XTXT, Arianda, Wassa, David, Pra Courtney, Samsung LC24RG50, Ilya, Slider Pox, Mr. Rude, Vochamarama, Wachamakichiche, Tsunia, Tsungtran, Shingas, Shang Guan, ZNE789, Last Star, Jacobu, Andreas, and a crying NSX.